Is this real? Oh, what is this?
It's just a back-to-back trophy. Don't worry about it. Just,
You didn't tell me we were celebrating. I got a belt.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, my bad. My bad, guys. My bad.
This is ridiculous already. Look, we had a comment in here before we even started the show. Ricky Dunks in the building.
The GOAT.
Oh, man. All right. Well, we're off the rails before we even get rolling. But I am Smitty. That is Joe Frick. That is Drew Hannes. We are back for another season of the Around the 4-2 Fantasy Football Show. As you can see, they both apparently won leagues last year. I mean, Joe plays in like 15. So how would he not win one? But we're back. We're excited to be here. And Drew just flashed you guys his shirt too. So can we see it again? There it is. That describes the Browns situation.
Lots of Browns fans on the show, I'm sure. Manny Max.
Yeah, I did him
Jacoby
in there.
Brissett, QB1.
Hey, for at least 6 games, probably a lot longer if Goodell and the NFL would get their way. But let's jump into it. Where do you guys want to start here? I know, Drew, you have a few injuries that you put on here immediately. We're going to see a lot more, unfortunately, come in during training camp and stuff like that. But are there any right now that stand out to you as ones that could impact, season-long or dynasty leagues?
Well, Matthew Stafford right off the bat.
There we go.
A little quiet on what's going on. They're just saying he has some elbow soreness. The dude threw like 1,000 times last year, so I'm not totally surprised by that. We're looking at like a Dak Prescott situation from last year. They're just going to start him off slow. We'll see where he's at in 4 weeks. But
you think there's any credence to them potentially trading for Jimmy G as a backup? That's been something that's been getting floated lately.
Can they afford him?
Ooh, in the division?
Can they even afford him though? Like $25 million on top of everything else they got going on?
I would have to imagine
that doesn't exist.
They would. Yeah, they don't believe in the cap. Look at what they've done lately. It's just unbelievable.
Did you see Joe Derrick's comment?
Yeah. But football's back. So Christmas has effectively come early for me. This is a really big time of the year. Fantasy football at this time is really great because it's all just like everybody's going to beat their projections. Everybody's going to outperform their ADP. And the person that I saw someone else post about on Twitter is going to go off, and nobody else has seen that tweet because it's probably buried in some stupid ass 10-part list that has now become popular across the fantasy community, which makes me want to reevaluate my life and decisions. But yeah, it's my favorite time of the year, second to Christmas. So it's good stuff.
Derek's other thing here, the good news is that no QB has ever had a career ruined by an elbow injury. Yeah, very true, very rare in this sport. Never happened before. But so what is the trickle-down effect? Because obviously that doesn't affect just Matthew Stafford. I mean, I've been talking about it not from a fantasy perspective, but arguing with people about Deontay Johnson with quarterback play, like playing a position like Cooper Kupp, obviously offensive player of the year last year, won a ton of people, a ton of money in a ton of fantasy football leagues. How would something like this impact him? Obviously, like we're throwing out a Jimmy G scenario, but if it's not a Jimmy G, if it's not Matthew Stafford, how much does that change a Cooper Kupp fantasy outlook?
Well, how much do you trust John Wolford? Because that's currently the backup for the Rams. I would have to imagine that that's going to play a pretty big role. I would say more on almost like Allen Robinson. Cooper Kupp, his ADOT was around 8 last year. So he's not the Jamar Chase burn for big plays. He's big in the red zone. He moves the chains. The amount of targets that he gets and how successful he was able to translate those with yards after the catch was really where he became the best receiver in football last year. I don't think that he would get less targets, but are those targets going to be of the same quality? Probably not. I don't think that this is going to be something that takes Stafford out entirely. I think this will push Kupp. It will push Stafford. It will push pretty much their entire offense down on draft boards, but this is something he played through last year, won a Super Bowl with it. I'm not too worried about it. You can't live in your fears. Scared money don't make no money.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, you kind of covered your bases there because I was going to say, say Stafford doesn't miss any time. He is playing, but he's just dealing with this. Then how much does that affect what we're talking about here in terms of, Cooper Kupp's value and stuff?
Yeah, I don't think that it does. I think Allen Robinson provides a much more legitimate number 2 that they missed in the second half of the year. If you remember in the first half of 2021, Robert Woods, when he went out with injury, was actually a number one wide receiver. Drew and I talked a little bit about this last week. The majority of that performance and those stats came from 2 or 3 games that he had. Bobby Trees was pretty upset with the way they were utilizing him. Funny, going back into the preseason, they were like, oh, like Woods and Stafford, that's the connection, fade Kupp, all this stuff. And then Kupp has arguably the greatest wide receiver season in the history of football. I think that having like a legitimate option there for the full season, that could eat into his target share a little bit, but I think he's a pretty safe bet. I mean, it's kind of like what you had a hit tweet the other day on Twitter, obviously, about Deontay Johnson, his ability to separate and do these different things. That's a skill set that Cooper Kupp definitely has as well. So players that get open, they'll find ways to get him the ball. So it's not like he's this contested target person that's making these difficult catches, making things happen. He gets open. They find ways to get him open. And you kind of trust the genius of the offense there.
Drew, well, I don't know why I just called him Drew. Sorry, Derek, you're not Drew. Derek is bringing what this show's all about here, asking questions already. Zeke, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, Debo, Deontay Kittle, half-point PPR, and I can keep up to 4. He doesn't know WTF to do.
The only question I would have is, are those all like those are just 4 picks? Is there any value to
like a draft pick being lost?
Yeah. So like I know I'm in a league, we have 5 keepers. And the round that you drafted them in, you get to keep them at that round. So that puts a little bit different weight on things. Whereas okay, so it's gonna be your first 4 picks.
Yes.
Okay.
Value, you can eliminate Zeke and Kittle.
Oh, by the way, it's keep up to 4, so he doesn't have to take all 4, I'm guessing, right?
Right. Yeah. So you would just start drafting whenever those rounds would be. I think I would probably keep Kittle, Drew, just because if you have a top tight end, you're going to have to take them with pretty much your first pick anyway. If anybody has a tight end that's worth it. Right.
You would waste one of the first picks in your first 4 rounds on Kittle when he's going with like a 6th or 7th round ADP.
Is he going with a 6th? Because he's the 4th tight end off the board right now.
Yeah, but tight ends are deep. Like Kittle's or
Kittle's at 40. Kittle's at 44.
Like
Kyle Pitts is at 36, and Andrews is at 19. Kelsey is at 9. So Kittle falls within that first 4 windows. So just from a value scarcity alone, it's like either you're punting on tight end altogether and you're going to try to pick up a guy that hasn't blown up yet, or do you take one of the top 4 guys? To me, I would rather.
Where are you at with Trey Lance? I think that probably skews how you feel about Kittle too. Right. If you're willing to use a first 4 pick on him.
Yeah, I don't think you're getting exceeding value from Kittle, but you're pretty much getting him at value. Kamara, are you willing to bet that he is not going to get suspended? They've already moved his court date once. I would like to think that he's not going to face anything in this current season. But who knows with that? So that's where the risk is there. Otherwise, he would instantly he was a top 5 running back last year. He would be in the first round. And then it's like, do you want to do Debo and Kittle? I think that's an interesting discussion just because it's like you're really leaning on Lance at that point. Debo is really able to do what he did last year because of his running attack. Interestingly enough, the San Francisco running room is a lot thinner this year compared to last year, a lot more unknowns, so that could bode well for you. But yeah, I feel like it's tough. You have a lot of picks that aren't necessarily first rounders that you're getting to keep, which is tough. But there's a lot of value. Those are all like 2nd, 3rd, 4th round guys. So I don't think you could go wrong with any of them. I think if I'm cutting 1, it would definitely be Zeke. If I'm cutting 2, it would probably be, I don't know. It might be Debo, honestly.
Debo's going in the first round for his ADP, like right at the tail end. Kittle's ADP on ESPN.
Debo Samuel?
Yeah, he's like on ESPN, he's like the 13th overall player. He's he's spilling into the back end. And Kittle's our ADP on ESPN is 49.
I have Debo at 25.
I have the tab open right now.
I was curious as to where we were at with Aaron Jones, because I know the three of us in a group chat have been talking a lot about A.J. Dillon cutting more and more into that.
Right. Yeah. So if you look at their touches from last year, they were only separated by 2 touches. The thing with Aaron Jones, and something that a lot of people are kind of anchoring on this year from a fantasy perspective, is that when Davante Adams was out of the lineup, the amount of targets that he got essentially doubled. If you're thinking about Green Bay, the biggest drawback they have in their offense is that they're a very slow-paced team. They are one of the more methodical teams in the NFL. So you don't get the volume that you might see from other teams' running backs just because they don't run as many plays. Interestingly enough, having the back-to-back MVP, they have had a high output in offense, but the touches are going to be limited. I think that the higher that you go in a PPR format, the more value that Aaron Jones is going to have. I like Jones a lot in a full PPR scenario. Think he can return ADP at a half PPR. I would fade him at like a standard league, but I don't know if anybody even plays standard anymore. So I don't know.
Don't even get us started. I mean, how many times do we got to bring it up? Last year, I think every episode at some point we said, if you're not in a PPR league, get in a PPR league. So yeah, that's tough. Somebody else sent us a different scenario as well. Someone sent a trade to me. I received Mixon, Knox, and Irv Smith. He received Singletary, Waller, and DJ Moore. And also they would be giving up a 3rd-round pick. So they would be giving up a 3rd Singletary, Waller, and DJ Moore for Mixon, Dawson Knox, and Irv Smith.
So my rule of thumb for all of these big and convoluted trades is who's getting the best player. Receiving Mixon is easily the best player, in my opinion. He was the RB3 in half PPR last year. Their offensive line has improved dramatically if you believe in any of the PFF rankings. So looking at last year, they were ranked 20 at the end of the season. They're coming in this year ranked 8th. So they invested pretty heavily in the O-line. The other thing I really like about Joe
Kappa.
Exactly, yeah. And the other thing I really like about Joe Mixon is that a lot of the running backs that we see at the top of the board, they also have somewhat mobile QBs. I don't think that's really going to be in the cards for Joe Burrow, so you don't have that risk of vulturing touchdowns from like a running back per se, or from a quarterback per se. So I think sending back Waller and DJ Moore is a lot. I think
this is probably the time to trade Waller, though.
Right. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think that ultimately Waller is still probably a top half tight end, but they're going to be extremely limited in terms of how they spread the ball around between Adams, Hunter Renfrow, and then Waller. It's also interesting to point out that Derek Carr has never thrown for more than 30 touchdown passes in a season. I think his career high is 28. So he's put up yardage, but he's never been able to find the end zone really. And if I was a betting person, I would imagine that in the red zone, they most primarily targeted Renfrow last year, but I would imagine that you're going to try to find a way to get Adams the ball in that scenario just because he's so good. And then for DJ Moore, he is like Mr. Potential. I feel like every year it's like DJ Moore is going to do it. DJ Moore is going to do it. He's the only player in the league in the past 3 years that's had like 1,300 yards consistently.
Has he? And Derek mentioned this too, that he doesn't get in the end zone. I don't think he has a year where he has more than like 8, right? I mean, what's he maxed out?
It might even be 6. It might even be 6.
Oh, wow.
It just doesn't happen. I mean, him having Baker could bump things up a little bit, but Baker's never really supported a top wideout either. So it'll be interesting to see, was that a product of the quarterback? Was that a product of being in a run first system? Kind of hard to say, but there is some risk there. The only thing that I would say is I'm assuming that this is a redraft league. Giving up the 3rd, I think that would probably, if it's a redraft 3rd-round pick, I like that trade a lot less, just because you're essentially losing like an Aaron Jones or somebody on top of that. I think that value's too much. So if you didn't have the draft picks, I'd feel more comfortable with it. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be taking that trade. Irv Smith's a breakout candidate in tight ends. We'll cover that in a later episode. Dawson Knox, he's touchdown dependent, but I don't see him being a top 2 target on the team, nor do I see that for Irv Smith. So to me, you're not really gaining anything from any of those guys. So it's really, is it worth Mixon for Waller and Moore and a third? I would say that's too rich for my blood.
Yeah. Right. Same. Well, speaking of Mixon, Ricky has a situation here as well. Keep 3 out of Mixon for a 4th, Swift for a 5th, Javonte for a 7th, and Cam Akers for a 16th. I mean, Javonte for a 7th.
I don't like Javonte personally. I love him as a player. I think he's a fantastic football player, but why would Denver do anything different than what they did last year?
They got a new head coach.
I guess, but he also wants to let Russ cook. So I think that they're going to be passing the ball a little bit more. I think they're going to split the carries. This is really, in my opinion, the last season that Melvin Gordon will be viable. He's getting really close to that 1,800 touch threshold in his career. So I think it's going to be
I don't know, dude. His workouts are insane.
Sir James Harris
his
doesn't even play football no more.
But have you seen his work? I'm like joking.
I haven't.
Have you seen his? Yeah, he's like real into like the beach workouts and stuff, like the ladder workouts on the beach. Pretty cool stuff.
Tough on your body too. That's tough on your body.
But I had to bring up Javonte on this show, obviously, because one of Drew's least favorite people in the world is Melvin Gordon. So I don't know though. I mean, yeah, you keep Joe Mixon for a 4th.
Yeah.
And you take Cam Akers for a 16th, no brainer.
I don't know. I
love Cam Akers this year. I'm not getting into this with you again.
If Stafford's elbow, what are they going to do?
They ran him into the ground. They ran him into the ground his rookie year at the end of the season. Okay, he came into last season with a torn Achilles, and they gave him 24 carries in a playoff game. Like, man, he's going to get the rock this year. I believe that. His stock is rising. He went up like he went up a full round this year in ADP just in this last week as they started to talk more and more about him. I just think that he's going to be a bell cow. Henderson will give him some rub every now and then, but they want to give him the ball. And just think about what they did in that playoff game with an Achilles rupture, like 8 months or 6 months earlier. He had the entire offseason to work out and get back to full strength. He's going to be a completely different player coming into this year.
I mean, maybe they say that he may never get back. They say he may never get back to full strength. I think if it's for me, I think the value of Akers is going to far exceed the ADP. So I would reluctantly take him, but I would rather have Swift for a 5th than Javonte for a 7th. Give me the bell cow running back on somebody with a much improved offensive line that has a much improved team around him overall. I know that you don't like Swift because he didn't have more than 15 carries against except for the Steelers game.
I don't have that big of a problem with DeAndre Swift. I just think his ADP could be a little too high right now because he's right at the tail end of the first round and he's not getting enough volume consistent.
How big is this?
That offensive line's fantastic. But
yes. Yeah. So
I actually worry. Go ahead.
His efficiency can be much higher, obviously, because of that old line, but he still needs to get the ball. I can't remember what the line was that I talked to you about last time. Let me look it up.
About the 50 attempts by Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, it's in the Steelers game. That was the only.
My big thing is, where does Jamal Williams factor into all this? He's like, the Lions seem to love him.
I mean, how could you not? Did you see that video of him the other day, like hyping the team up, talking about like how bad they were last year?
Yeah, and he just seems like
so much. Like he's such a good dude.
He's literally the perfect type of player to play for Dan Campbell. I mean,
how
much work does he take away? Is it enough for Swift to not be worth a 5th?
I mean, for me, it's like if you look at the volume for where he is currently being drafted, so he averaged like 11.6 carries last year. So he's being drafted around like Aaron Jones, who had 11.4, Saquon Barkley had 12.5, Fournette had 12.9. I'm going to exclude Kamara. He's at 18.5, but that's more due to the suspension concerns. Javonte Williams, 11.9.
Can you exclude the Steeler game where he had 33 carries and tell me where he was? He has to be at 10. Like, come on.
Why are we going to exclude a full? It's a full season of work, though. Like, you can't just.
That game is an outlier, though. 33.
Is this a Tyler Lockett discussion?
They ran the ball on like every play.
Yeah.
That game.
It was
Derek,
also
like Derek
a
said,
monsoon.
us three could have ran on the Steelers last year. Wait, us three? There's 4 of us, Derek. If you're including, you mean us 3 or
He knows what I can't
us 4?
play. That's
You
why
don't count. You have bad knee.
But look, here's the other piece to it. He also was averaging 6 targets a game last year, which is higher than everybody except.
Does that happen still though?
I don't. Yeah, exactly. I think it
does.
I like his talent. It's just that his ADP is scary for me. I'd rather him in like mid to late second than near the end of the first.
All right, I've been talked into out of this scenario. I've been talked into Mixon, Swift, and Cam Akers. That's my 3. Even though I led off by saying Devante for 7th, that was more for
Swift is getting more. Swift is getting more touches per game than Devante. Could Devante outscore him? But
Mason Rudolph threw the ball 50 times in that game.
QB1, watch your mouth. Show some respect.
Where's he doing in fit? No, we're not doing this. There is one other injury that I wanted to bring up. This is a guy coming back from injury, though, so this is a little bit different. And I'm sure when we talk about receivers, we're going to get into him. But I know you love Michael Thomas. I know you're a big fan of his. So I wanted to know how you feel about his progression coming back from injury. Is he a viable fantasy option this year?
If you would have said to me a month ago that you were drafting him where he was going, I'd be pissed. But all the talk out of camp is that he looks phenomenal. So
best shape of his life.
Yeah, this is just camp talk. You really buying into it that much?
The thing is, though, they're going to be throwing the ball a ton because they're going to be losing a lot of football games. Jameis is going to throw it. Mason Rudolph, Detroit Lions, and he's the king of the slant. He's going to get a lot of high percentage targets, and I think that he's going to start to reward a lot of people that's been picking him where he's at. I think his ADP might start to rise once he starts to play, if they play him in any preseason games or if there's any more tape that comes out. I think that he's like a 7th round value right now. It's pretty good.
At wide receiver 31, I mean, it's a pretty good risk to take.
Yeah.
The problem
he was being drafted late last year with the hopes that he'd play.
Right. Yeah. It's like he's getting drafted around Amon-Ra St. Brown, Juju, Elijah Moore, Adam Thielen. I would take a flyer on him at that point. That's like a league winning move. Sure, you can take Gabe Davis and be like, oh, maybe he pops off, or you can take someone that was 2 years away from being a wide receiver 1.
Actually, I'm going to put you guys on the spot right now because you said Gabe Davis, and I saw Drew's reaction and my reaction to it. Who is one guy, example, last year, me with Darnell Mooney, that you are you're flying under the radar kind of, but you're this guy's going to pop off this year. He's going to be somewhere in that top, say if it's a running back, I guess 15, if it's a wide receiver, top 25 range. And I fully admit to everybody watching this is me putting this was not in the notes at all.
This was not in the notes, man.
You didn't even look at the notes.
Yes, I did.
It might have been. It might have been. I didn't look at them, so I wouldn't know if it was.
If we have to go with a wide receiver, I'm reluctant because I do worry about his injury history. I guess I don't know what his history fully is but he struggled last year with injuries. Kadarius Toney and Bobby Trees, dude. Bobby Trees and Brandon Ayuk, they're going in the 13th and 14th round. They're free. So I'm very high on Ayuk. There's a lot of stuff coming out of their camp video-wise where he's just killing it with Trey Lance. I think Lance is going to bomb the ball down the field. He's going to be the recipient of those targets. I like him. I like Bobby Trees based on his ADP, and someone has to catch the ball in Tennessee. Treylon Burks is running with the 2s and 3s. They're saying he's struggling with asthma. Bobby Trees is going to be the guy getting a lot of those targets. So I like him. But Kadarius Toney, I think that if you pick him, I think that he could reward a lot of people if he stays healthy as well. As long as Daniel Jones throws it in the middle of the field and not to the first row like that video we saw the last time. That was
brutal.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of people that have been pointing to Kenny Golladay for that reason as well. There's been a recent trend with wide receivers when they change teams on these big deals. They're really struggling their first year after they make the move, which makes you, if you're a Tyreek Hill truther, pretty scared. But I think that somebody has to emerge from the Giants. Let me see. Who's somebody looking at from a receiver's perspective?
Well, you look that up. I'm going to throw a running back out, and I have absolutely no reason or stats to like this guy. I just love the guy. Damien Pierce. He is my running back for this year. He's going to go undrafted, and he could be the RB1 in Houston. I mean, they're going to be down a lot, so I don't know how many carries he's going to get per game, but I just love that dude. That video, I think I told Zach during like our first rookie draft, when I saw him, his helmet got ripped off and he ran to the goal line and scored on that ball. I was just, he is going to be on every roster I have, and I lived up to that. All my dynasty drafts, I've been able to acquire him in like the second round. I love that guy. I'm hoping that he gets enough run and maybe produce for free again.
So I guess he's going a little bit higher than I thought he was when I had my answer for this question. So I don't know if it can still count. Because Joe, you mentioned the range that he's kind of going in, but my guy would have been Elijah Moore, a second-year guy, kind of like the same reason. I just think he's going to balloon this year. He had a good rookie year, obviously, but I think he's going to pop off this year because I think Zach Wilson takes a step too. Even though he's not going to have Mekhi Becton protecting him, I still feel pretty good about that leap that he's going to take.
That injury,
Ricky said Alan Lazard.
There's two guys that come to mind for me. I don't think they're going to be wide receiver ones, but I think they're going to greatly outperform ADP. The first one's going to be Devante Parker. I think that Mack takes a step forward. I think that was a brilliant pickup for them. He has elite metrics still and had subpar QB play. He did have a little bit of an injury concern last year, but he really stepped up at the end of 2020 and then had kind of like a shaky year last year. But I really think that he's going to have a good one. And it's funny that you started this conversation on the Buffalo piece. I am not really all that big on Gabe Davis. I think he's going to be overhyped and a bust. That being said, I think that Jamison Crowder is going to go completely under the radar. If you look at what Cole Beasley did out of the spot for Buffalo, I think that he's going to really fly under the radar, have some really big games, and can do a lot of damage there. Jamison Crowder, when he was in Washington, was a phenomenal slot receiver. There was way too many cooks in the kitchen in New York, but I think that he really has found a good home, and I think he's wide receiver 68, so I think he'll greatly surpass that. There's a lot of people in that area that I actually like a lot. Marvin Jones Jr., even with the additions that they made in Jacksonville, could easily be a big play there too.
Christian got hurt today, by the way. Sorry, yeah. Christian got hurt today, by the way. I don't know the severity of it, but he did leave practice, so that obviously benefits Marvin Jones. Before we move on, though, can you look up Gabe Davis, how many targets he got in the red zone last year? Because the reason why I'm so high on him is that I've read that his target percentage in the red zone was insane. So
you just watched that playoff game and said, this is my guy going forward.
You can take that out, though. You can take that out for the season. Most of his targets came in the red zone.
So let's see. So he had 17 red zone targets for 9 receptions, which was 14th in the league last year.
Which is, for his amount of playing time he had, that's significant in my opinion. That's why I'm so high on Gabe Davis. So if you can turn into more targets that are actually with volume, because he's high on efficiency, but he was only getting, I don't know how many targets, probably less than 50 for sure.
Targets, he was getting about 4 a game.
Yeah, so.
Wow. Jared, I've had Laviska Shenault for 2 seasons. I can't show me it. I can't do it. If I'm going to redraft, I don't care. He can figure out somebody else's roster.
Travis Etienne is going to completely gobble up any role Laviska Shenault had, because he was a gadget guy, and what Etienne does with the ball in his hands, they're going to give him those touches. They're not going to go to Shenault anymore. I wouldn't roster him anymore, in my opinion.
I thought they were going to trade him, honestly.
Yeah.
Probably should have.
Yeah.
Probably would have been best for all parties. We did get another question, and then we can move on. 12th pick in a 14-team league. For my first pick, should I go Kelsey, Diggs, or Adams, and why? If you guys don't mind me asking a question, appreciate all answers.
Wow.
Well, the first thing is we know that all 3 are going to be there. I mean,
I think that it's a pretty safe bet. I think Kelsey could go before 12. Adams maybe, but I think there's a pretty safe chance. I play in one 14-team league, and the only advice that I can give is that it's a lot easier to field middling wide receivers. If you don't have running backs in a 14-team league, it's pretty brutal. Looking at their ADP, let me see here. So Diggs is at 13, Adams is at 14, and then Kelsey is coming in at 9. Kelsey may not be there. My thing for the year, I don't think this is that bold, but I think Mark Andrews is now the tight end 1. I don't think Kelsey has it anymore. And I think that Lamar had a
wait till you hear the bold prediction when we get there. Well, I'll wait a couple weeks for it, but it's off of what you were just saying.
Juju's converting the tight end will be the new tight end 1 for the Chiefs.
Do you just want it now? You just want it now?
I would prefer it. I hate when people say surprise. I have a surprise for you, but then I'm not going to tell you what it is. It's a personal thing.
I think Kyle Pitts is going to be tight end 1, and I think he's going to compete with guys as the top target getter in the league, including wide receivers this year.
You thought Dak was quarterback 1 last year. What do you know?
That's why it was bold.
He had a pass.
Are you saying this at like that's same type of level, like the same type of boldness, or do you really feel that strongly about this?
I feel that strongly. I rostered him in every league that I could, and I've been offering deals in our one dynasty league, and I just can't. He won't bite. He wants Kyler Murray, which is tough for me.
Follow-up question from that same person. What would be the very last running back you would take in the first round before you would pivot to like a wide receiver or tight end?
Joe Mixon or Dalvin Cook.
So, yeah, I would say Mixon is probably the last one. And then I would, since you're on the tail end of it, then I would say that you look at, if Mixon's gone, you pick up one of those receivers that are probably there. And then on the way back, I would be taking one of Swift, Saquon Barkley, Fournette, Kamara, like that range of player. I am a little bit higher on Fournette than most.
Isn't he a fullback now?
Maybe.
Did he
He's just being a little bit of an Eddie Lacy, man. It's fun.
I thought that he cut all the weight already.
He did cut the weight.
That's insane. He's like on Always Sunny.
He's like an MMA fighter.
It's like when James Harden went to the Nets.
No, he's just been wearing a lot of black, so it's slimming. You can't tell. He still weighs the same. How about the fact that like we have topics for the show, right? We're supposed to talk about quarterbacks and running backs. We haven't like done any of that yet. So where do you guys want to start? Which position? And I'll just let one.
We had one more question. Hold on. I don't know if that was a question.
I saw a statement. I didn't see a question.
Oh, that's a statement. Okay. No, it says my only running back is Ramondre, but with the Hall off the board, yeah. Can you just put it up on the screen for the class? Cool. All right, so I had the second pick and traded Tony, Van Jefferson, and Knox to get the third pick since my only running back is Ramondre. But with Hall off the board, should I trade out of that? So this has got to be a dynasty question. I would not take a running back as a second or third pick at this point. I think there's way too much value in the wide receivers that are there. Which one you value the most, I think, can be decided. Drake London was my top wide receiver coming into the year. There's a lot of people that have had Olave climbing pretty heavy up the boards, and similarly having Burks fall. I think from a dynasty perspective, I always try to ignore the narratives that are in training camp and things like that, just because there is like a longer kind of bandwidth that you're dealing with these players. So if it was me, if you're dead set on getting a running back, I would absolutely trade back. I don't think losing Van Jefferson, Knox, and Tony, I think that was a great trade, honestly. I don't think Van Jefferson's worth much. I don't think Knox is worth much. But I would not draft a running back second or third overall in a dynasty format in a rookie draft.
I'm a bit higher than most on Kenneth Walker. I still think 3 is a little rich for him. I think that they're going to be down, obviously, a crap ton, and he's going to get a lot of targets out of the passing game. They're saying that he's going to be their passing down guy. And obviously, with Rashad Penny's injury history, you never know if he's going to make it week to week. But it's still a little rich for third round.
Yeah, I got him at what, 7th or something?
Yeah, I think 6th. I think 6th, right? If you're if you're built to win now, I'd obviously go with Drake London. I think he is going to have a pretty significant role this year as well. But if you're built for the future, I would go with a guy with like Jameson Williams. I think that he has the most upside out of all those wide receivers long term. So if you're built to win now, I'd target Drake London. But if you're not ready to compete for a championship, I'd probably look at Jameson Williams.
The other thing I will say on that topic is that I had the 3rd and 4th pick in a rookie draft this year, and I actually took Kenneth Walker 4th only because I knew Tyler Hurley needed a running back, and he was drafting right after me, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to make it happen.
Is Tyler in here right now? He's going to be heated after hearing this. Or does he already know this? Did you tell him that you drafted him just for that purpose?
Oh, he knew. He knew as soon as the pick was made.
Gotcha.
Was Darnell Palm there at 5?
He was actually probably still on Tyler's roster, actually.
Yeah, right. Of course he was.
The other thing that you could do is if you're looking, you could get an established running back for the 3rd overall pick. So you don't have to exclusively look at the rookie class unless you have some interesting league settings or something like that. So I would take whoever you think is the top wide receiver, try to either work out a deal to potentially trade down if you want to go with Kenneth Walker, or look to get a trade for an established player. That would probably be my route.
Yeah. No, so that's like you said. I mean, getting the 3rd overall pick for that, I think it was a great deal, but that doesn't mean you have to stick there now. Like that trade's been accepted. That's your pick now.
It's done.
You can do whatever you want. You can flip it.
Exactly.
All right. So quarterbacks or running backs?
Let's go QBs.
At this point, we should rattle through a bunch, right?
Yeah, you can rattle through whatever you want. I'm turning the floor over to you.
All right. So I have a question. Go ahead, Drew. You go ahead. Sorry.
No, go with your question because I didn't really.
I was going to say, okay, so last year Lamar Jackson had a 4.2 touchdown percentage for like all of his attempts. His previous 3 seasons, he averaged 6.7%. Do you think that this was a result of the Baltimore injury-plagued season that they had, where everybody on their team had a season-ending injury before the season started? Or do you think that teams have figured out how to defend Lamar and that he is struggling to adapt to defensive schemes that have been built around for him?
Well, he tends to struggle against the Steelers. So I'm wondering if you take those 2 matchups out of it, how much that changes it, first and foremost. Secondly, I'm not even sure I care. The dude is betting on himself. I have him as going to be my QB1 at the end of the season. I think he's going to run the ball a ton. He's going to throw the ball better. Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews are going to do well for him. I think that even though this is a Steelers podcast in fantasy football, I think that Lamar is going to have a really good season and he's going to make a lot of money. And then I hope that he ruins the Ravens front office, just like Joe Flacco.
Maybe it's not even with the Ravens he gets extended. Maybe he's gone from Baltimore.
They'll tag him. There's no way.
He's going to make his money this year. I'm sure of it.
But yeah, it's interesting to think that somebody that's QB4 on the consensus is underrated, but I could definitely see him exceeding his ADP. It's interesting because the way that you traditionally think about quarterbacks, especially for fantasy football, is a lot different than it was even 5 years ago. Where it's somebody like Jalen Hurts, who I don't think anybody would really consider as like a top QB in real life football, but he had the most fantasy points per play last year as a QB. And before he hurt his ankle, he was the QB1. So having that rushing upside becomes very important. And similarly, that's why this year I'm fading like someone like Joe Burrow, who his TD percentage was up 1.5% from his rookie year. That being said, it's only been 2 years of data, so where do we know where he actually lies? But he's pretty reliant on big plays. He's not going to be the one that has like the high floor from running. And they don't take a lot of deep shots. A lot of it was plays that were made by the receivers around him. So I think he is more of the Derek Carr mold, where he has a lot of receptions, a lot of catches, but maybe not a lot of touchdown passes. So the yards will be there. But I think that Joe Burrow, I don't think he can exceed being QB7. So it's like, what's the point of drafting him as QB7 if that's what he's already going to be? To me, that's like his peak, unless he throws for 50 touchdowns.
I faded Joe Burrow as well. And he said a lot of good points, but the big one for me is that he scored 40% of his fantasy points in 3 games. 2 of which were against the Ravens, who had no one on defense. And the other one was just a crazy shootout against the Chiefs where Jamar Chase went insane.
That was in the playoffs too, wasn't it?
Receiving yards.
That was in the championship round, actually. Me, Zach, and Platt were standing in Rivers just watching me get absolutely smoked.
Unbelievable. Hated it.
How do you feel about someone like Russell Wilson this year? So he's got a new team. He's no longer to run first offense, allegedly. He had the finger last year. To me, it's like, did he actually recover from that? Really, since ever he came out with let Russ cook, he's kind of sucked, in my opinion. So do you think that he can actually cook this year, or do you think that he is living off of an old name brand?
So I've been down on Russ for a couple of years, to be honest with you. So
yeah, you just drafted him in the second round of a dynasty league.
I did not want him. Was it the second round?
Yeah,
it was a 2 QB, to be fair.
You traded back in the second round.
True. Yeah. Okay.
That question's incredibly hard, to be honest with you. I have him as my QB 9. He has an ADP of like 90. I don't know what he's going to be. I really don't. I don't know what that offense is going to be entirely. I still feel like it's going to be mostly rushing. They're going to be a run-first offense, and I think that Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, I do like them as players, but they're not DK
No
Metcalf.
Tim Patrick.
Yeah, they're not DK Metcalf. I don't know who's going to be the guy that he can rely on as a receiver. I mean, they both could absolutely explode. Courtland Sutton has had some injury issues, but I don't know what they're going to look like. I really don't. That's a tough one.
Yeah. I'm probably going to fade Russell Wilson. I have a lot more faith in his receiving tandem in Jeudy and Sutton. I think that one of them will finish as a wide receiver 1 this year. You're kind of in the Cup and Woods scenario that you had last year, which one are you going to pick? Yeah. We all know I'm a big Booty Jeudy fan. Courtland Sutton seems to be getting more of the shine from a camp perspective. But Russell Wilson has shown that he is able to support 2 wide receivers in the top 24.
KJ Hamler's getting some talk at Broncos camp, though, too.
Sure.
He's the only one talking, though. It's just himself.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. So one of the questions, how are we feeling about Justin Herbert?
What do you want me to say?
Yeah, he's
good, bad, I don't know.
He's in the best division in football. They're all going to be great quarterbacks for fantasy because they're going to be scoring 30 to 40 points per game. I love them all. I mean, even Mahomes, I have him faded a little bit, I'll be honest with you, because he doesn't have Tyreek Hill. That offense entirely, I don't really know what to expect either because their running back situation to me is just absolutely terrible. We've been over this last year. I don't like CEH. I don't know if I like.
I'm off the train, by the way. Finally, yeah. I'm off the train.
Yeah, Joe's now real big into Ronald Jones. That's where he's
I don't know if I'm into Rojo anymore now, though, either.
I'm hearing he might not even make the roster.
Exactly. So, who the heck's going to be that guy? Is it really Isaiah? What's his last name?
Pacheco or whatever.
Pacheco or Damian Williams.
The 7th round.
I mean, Jerick McKinnon's back there. I have no idea how that roster's going to shake out.
Yeah, I don't. I have Mahomes.
Because like 2 of them are getting cut.
Right, and we don't know. I mean, Juju, I like. Obviously, I think that he's going to outproduce his ADP, but we still don't know who's going to be the guy. Sky Moore is obviously awesome. Zach, sorry again that Platt sniped you. He's obviously a great player, and Juju is obviously capable. We've seen it. But we don't know outside of Kelsey anything about that offense, in my opinion. So I'm
MVS slander has to stop.
The dude can't catch. Dude, he's Clifford Franklin. Like,
all right, back to the question at hand. You guys feel great about Justin Herbert, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, what's his floor? I mean, like we're talking about a guy that could finish as QB1. Like he has enough rushing ability for that to happen. But like, what's his floor? Like, what's the lowest that you can conceivably feel like Justin Herbert could finish at?
5, and I still think that's too low. Like
lowest, I would say 8th.
Really?
Okay. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm somewhere between like 5 and 7, but I still don't see it.
It just depends on how much he runs. I think that as what you see with quarterbacks like this that are mobile enough to run, they don't really want you to be taking the hits, so they start allowing you to just be more of a pocket passer. I mean, you look at like Roethlisberger. Like Roethlisberger could run, but he wouldn't even QB sneak. Or like Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, even last year.
Was it like 2008?
Yeah. We're going way back. Or if you look at like Aaron Rodgers, like he has the ability, he might have like a red zone touchdown here and there, but he's not scrambling for 50, 60 yards every game. There's a lot of players this year that are going in beyond the top 10 QBs that have a lot of rushing upside that makes things really interesting. You look at guys like Trey Lance in the games that he started or the games he even played, like they were constantly using him in the red zone. He ran the ball a ton. You have somebody like Justin Fields who will probably be running for his life because that offensive line is still awful. And the Steelers took the best player that they had on the line. Trevor Lawrence also could be doing a lot of running this year. So that could propel him up the boards. And then you also have somebody like Kirk Cousins who he's not really a runner, but they just got a new, more pass-happy coordinator. Jefferson's on the rise. Thielen's always grabbing touchdowns. So he could bust out and have a weird year and really surprise some people. So I think that Herbert has like a decent floor. I think he's safe to finish in the top 10, but to me, him and Mahomes have the least rushing prowess outside of Burrow and Brady, I guess. But out of the guys that like, he's not going to be like Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts. So if all those guys are still running like they are, it's going to be, you have to put up a lot of touchdowns to offset that.
Yeah, he'll run, but it's not designed runs.
Right.
Like it's because he's getting out of the pocket, nothing's open, and he'll take off. But
sure.
Go ahead, Drew.
I just want to mention something about Josh Allen quick too. Typically, I am always wait on quarterback, but Josh Allen, for the first time in years, I'm actually buying into drafting him in his third round to fourth round ADP because this dude is probably the safest quarterback that's been QB1 coming into the season since I don't even know how long. The dude had 32 rushing attempts in the red zone. Like his floor, I think, is so much higher because of his rushing ability in that zone, as well as if you look at his Falcons game from last year, he had 3 picks, no passing touchdowns. He still scored 23 fantasy points. That's an insane game for me. Like, I just think that you want to draft for upside, but you also want a safe pick earlier in your draft. So if you miss on some other guys later on, you have someone that's going to carry you a little further. Josh Allen's floor is so much higher than any other quarterback, in my opinion, and I feel safe drafting him. Obviously, as long as he doesn't get hurt.
No Brian Dabble doesn't concern you at all?
No.
I probably wouldn't take him just because the distance between like QB1 and QB10 is so much smaller than other positions. So to take the third or fourth round pick, and I would rather shore up in other areas or take a tight end.
It's not my strategy, and I'm not. Already, but like the last few years, we've gone into seasons with Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, guys that were just going in like the second and third round, really, really high, and they did not pay off. He's the one quarterback in recent memory that I feel like if you draft him, he's not going to hurt you in terms of a higher ADP when you draft a quarterback. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, I hear you. You feel comfortable with the pick because you feel like it's less risk.
There's less risk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're drafting Tom Brady and Kyler Murray in the 7th round. Obviously, that is smarter overall. But if you don't feel like you're going to get a guy like that, or you're worried and you want someone you think is close to a sure thing, I think Josh Allen is the closest thing to a sure thing in years. He's like Travis Kelce of quarterbacks right now.
Jalen Hurts, we already brought him up. Does Jalen Hurts' offense improving actually hurt his overall value? It's an interesting question.
I would say no. I think it's going to help. A.J. Brown is the dog of that team. Going into the season before the trade, I actually didn't like A.J. Brown. I declined a few trades for A.J. Brown while I was on Tennessee in some dynasty formats that I now regret. But I don't think that it hurts Jalen at all. I think that it's going to hurt Devonta Smith because I don't think that Jalen's Hurts has the skill to support 2 fantasy wide receivers and a tight end. I think that it hurts Dallas Goedert quite a bit. And I think that it'll be shocking if Miles Sanders goes 2 straight years without a rushing touchdown. But I don't think that it's going to be hurting him in any way. But I do think that his leash will be shorter because there was a concern last year that like he could get benched for Minshew. And it's like if you have all of these weapons and you're still not producing, like at what point would they kind of cut ties with him? Especially going into the year with the number 1 offensive line as well. So I think sky's the limit for him. He runs quite often. I wish he was going lower in drafts because I'm very interested in him. But I don't think he's going to dramatically improve. But I don't think he's going to get worse from a fantasy perspective. I think the biggest risk is he playing well enough on the field to keep his job?
His passing efficiency was so bad last year that can only go up from there. And the relationship that he has with A.J. Brown is obviously going to be a significant factor. I personally have been toggling back and forth on how I feel about A.J. Brown because I know that the relationship is very good and he might get a lot of targets. But they ran the ball, if not more than the Titans did. And they have more weapons that they need to spread the ball around to. So that concerns me. But you can't ignore the fact that Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown are essentially Joe Biden and Barack Obama in the White House.
What a comparison. I do understand where the question was coming from. I mean, he followed up and said, my thought is that he's going to be safer week to week, but the rushing ceiling could be capped a bit when you talk about him throwing the ball more because of having an A.J. Brown in town. So I understand where the question was coming from, but
I would rather have Hurts than Murray. If I had to choose one, I would take Hurts over Burrow. I would take Hurts over Brady.
Brady was QB2 last year, right?
What about Big Ben on my taxi squad? How do we feel about that?
It's gonna pay off.
All right, what else we got? Anything more with quarterbacks?
Just real quick, do you guys think that I don't want to get into the rest of the team, but do you guys think that Tua can get it done?
Oh boy, from a real life perspective, like is he?
Like, do you think he can be Do you think he can be a QB1? He's being drafted as QB16 right now.
There's just too many other good quarterbacks. I think he's the perfect QB2 though. If you're in Superflex.
Yeah, I mean, with those weapons, how do you not make it work? Like to at least, like you said, like a QB2. Respect Tua, says Platt.
He's better than his ADP for sure.
Yeah, like who's going in that same range? Like who's
so it's going to be within like a round or two. It's going to be Kirk Cousins, Tua, Justin Fields, Derek Carr, Trevor Lawrence.
Ooh,
there's just so many good quarterbacks.
And that's why I
really like Kirk Cousins this year.
But cool. Yeah, I think that was all I had for QBs.
Drew, do you have anything else with QBs?
Nope.
We did have one more question. One more QB. I'm crazy thinking Trubisky is a high-end QB1. Made Nagy look competent when he was there.
Super Bowl.
I'm going to say no. He can't throw to the left side of the field. Whoever's on the right side of the field is going to have a great year.
Don't play anybody on the left side.
You don't even need to. I hope he does well. I think he can be a serviceable quarterback. I probably won't draft him from a fantasy perspective. I just don't see it.
Is he the same guy that was talking to us about Justin Herbert, or was that someone else? Because high-end QB1, Trubisky versus Herbert.
No, Jared's the one that said how we feel about Herbert.
Oh, yeah, this was same question was about Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
That's bold.
I mean, obviously, like great weapons on the offense outside of the offensive line is going to be protecting him. But like Joe mentioned, he's very the tendencies, man. I just don't see him being able to give you back that value. You know what's funny though? Like not necessarily from a fantasy perspective, and I think Joe we're talking about this on Twitter. Was like Kenny Pickett like did the same thing at Pitt. Like get the ball roll out and just cut off half the field immediately as soon as you get the snap. Right. And they both also heavily target the middle of the field. So, hey, we're not talking about tight ends yet, but Pat Freiermuth.
Fade him.
All right, running backs. Where are we at? What do we talk about with running backs?
So something I've been looking into, which is a bit of a guessing game, but just looking at teams that had more than 50% of their carries vacated from last year. I don't think there's any secrets to the Ravens depth chart as far as Dobbins being ready for week 1. So he's locked in as the starter. It doesn't look like Edwards is going to be ready for week 1. But what's interesting is that there's a lot of people that have been drafting Tyler Beatty pretty early, I would say, for what he is on the team. And he was currently listed last on their depth chart today. So I don't know if that's more of a, hey, you're a rookie and we don't care. Because some people like Andy Reid, like he doesn't like filling out depth charts. So he has like the media do it. But apparently Justice Hill has had a really good camp. And they've said that is wide open. So to me, it's like, if you're not getting Dobbins, or maybe if you want to take a really late round flyer on Edmonds, I wouldn't really be investing on anybody else for the Ravens. I don't think Tyler Beatty in a redraft scenario really holds any value at this time.
Is Tyler Beatty, not necessarily a fantasy question, is Tyler Beatty the kid out of Missouri? Do we know? Pretty sure he is, because I think I liked him coming out. But that's obviously not necessarily a great landing spot when you talk about all the mouths there.
Yeah, he did play for Missouri.
Okay, yeah, thought so.
I thought his last name was pronounced Batty this whole time.
Maybe it is.
It's not. I looked it up to be sure before I got on the show.
Okay.
That's how little I feel for him for fantasy football.
Yeah.
Another one that's interesting, we talked about it a little bit. The Texans were at 57.1% vacated carries. They signed Marlon Mack. They drafted Damien Pierce in the 4th round. They also have Rex Burkhead. Their offensive line improved from the 29th best to 22nd best, and Pierce is getting a lot of buzz from camp. Do you guys buy that at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm buying it too.
I love
it.
Excellent. So right now he is going, it's probably changing as a lot of this hype is coming out. But Marlon Mack is the 54th running back off the board. Damien Pierce is actually ahead of him at 48. I don't know if they're going to have enough value. They didn't really score a lot last year. I think there's some dependency on Mills taking a step forward. But he could be a later round flyer. So he's looking like a round 10, round 11 type pick. Could be something that's interesting there. Another rookie that was at the bottom of the depth chart was Tyler Algiere. So he was listed behind Damian Williams, Avery Williams, a bunch of random guys
on their depth chart from what I read today.
Yeah. And they've noted a few times in camp that Avery Williams has been pretty dangerous from a pass catching perspective. They still have Cordero Patterson. The big knock on him is a needed improvement for pass protection. So that could be something. Raiders, they have over 50% as well. Their O-line got worse by one spot. So if you're banking on that, might be a fade for Josh Jacobs. The player that I'm really curious about is Kenyon Drake. So it seems like they don't really have a role for him right now. He's currently 4th on their depth chart. So Brandon Bolden was brought over from New England. Probably going to be a special teams guy. He has a lock. They just drafted.
Who's going to be the goal line guy?
Who's going to be the goal line guy?
Why does Josh McDaniels give him a lot of carries in New England for no reason, and like goal line carries? Like he's going to be a vulture.
You think Bolden will be?
Yeah, it just makes sense for him to be an annoying vulture in this backfield.
Yeah. And I think there's going to be a battle between Kenyon Drake and Amir Abdullah for that last roster spot. I'd rather have nothing to do with either. I'm not going to waste a draft pick on them.
They drafted that Zamir White, right?
Zamir White. He looks really good, yeah.
Are you out on Josh Jacobs?
Am I out on Josh Jacobs? No. There's been talk that they're planning on trading him because they played him so much in the Hall of Fame game. But no, I like Jacobs. I think he has a safe floor. He's a good RB2, but he wouldn't be – like I would need to have another running back that I'd have.
I do not like Josh Jacobs. We argued about this 2 nights ago. He's telling me he's going to take Josh Jacobs over Cam Akers, and it was infuriating me. It was just
I would still do it.
Dude, like Josh Jacobs in week 16 had 27 carries for 129 yards, and that was his ceiling. Like, the dude has to have insane volume or he has to score multiple touchdowns to pay off.
Well, yeah, that's like everybody.
Well, his efficiency, though, is like poor.
Right, but you also have to keep in mind something that I'm thinking about with Josh Jacobs is that the offense is going to be – defenses are going to have to game plan around Adams, around Renfro, around Waller. He's going to be a dump-off. He's going to have like a much easier path to like easier touches as a running back.
I disagree. I think the dump-offs –
that would be if he's in Vegas, which isn't going to be the case.
Right.
I think the dump-offs are prime Hunter Renfro territory. His routes are all short, and when they're in the red zone, Devante Adams had like the most insane target share in the red zone of any player in the last like 5 years. I think that Derek Carr is just going to be throwing it to Devante Adams in the red zone constantly, and if they're not going to him, they're going to Darren Waller, and Josh Jacobs ain't going to score as many touchdowns as he's been scoring. He's going to be like a running back 3 or 4 based on his efficiency.
I hate Josh Jacobs, so I have him on. Hey, Joe, if you like Josh Jacobs, I got him in our dynasty league. I'm looking to move him. So
talk to me nice. All right, we had a couple more questions that rolled in.
Yeah.
So PPR keeper league, I have Tyreek, Barkley, and Pitts. Horrible foundation. I have the first pick, and I'm stuck on either taking Swift or Keenan Allen. I'm taking Swift.
Yeah, I mean, with that Tyreek, Barkley, and Pitts, I would go the running back route as well. I'm very high on Saquon this year. I think 2 years removed from his ACL, as long as he doesn't have some annoying hamstring or ankle injury, I think he's going to be an RB1. Roll your eyes all you want. I just feel that. Like,
and the Giants also moved from 30 to 18.
How much did Steffi Smalls pay you to say that?
How about this? We're going to have this conversation. CMC, where are you drafting CMC?
Me personally, like
in the first round, right? In your top 5, where are you drafting him?
I guess you have to, but like I hate it though.
What's the difference between Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley?
Talent.
Christian McCaffrey had 5 20-point games last year.
Okay. He had obviously injury history. Saquon Barkley has played more games in the last 2 years than CMC.
Yeah, but
he just talked about the Giants' offensive line is probably better than the Panthers' offensive line.
I can tell you. Hold on. Yeah,
we had that chart. It was like
which makes it more impressive that CMC is the one having 20-point games.
Listen, he was coming off a torn ACL. The injuries that CMC has aren't like significant knee injuries. He has like nagging shoulder injuries or elbow injuries. He can't take hits. If you're going to argue that you would draft CMC in the first round, how are you fading Barkley in the 3rd or 4th?
I like both. I don't think Saquon is going to come draft time. I think he's going to be a 2nd-round running back.
I'm hoping they do have happen, obviously.
Improvements to the line for sure. I think the biggest difference between McCaffrey and Barkley, at least last year, was that McCaffrey's getting about 2 more targets per game on average that he plays.
Okay.
That's going to be a big thing. I would also argue that, and I think this is a pretty safe argument, that Baker Mayfield is substantially better than Daniel Jones. So that makes things a heck of a lot easier for Carolina as well.
I think they're going to stink. But I think that Saquon's volume is just going to be absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. As long as he can stay healthy, he is set up to destroy his current ADP.
Maybe.
They paid a receiver, though. And they've spent a first or 2nd-round
pick
on a receiver in the last 3 years.
If Barkley doesn't do it this year, he's not starting in the NFL next year. He's playing for his life.
He's taking somebody else will give him a chance. Somebody else will give him a chance. If it's not the Giants,
I'll give him a chance.
He's not going to be the guy somewhere. He's not going to get paid based off his injury history.
David Johnson
I don't think
another contract.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think he's going to get like a huge payday, but I think he'll be a starter.
Who gave him the contract? Huh?
He got the Cardinals signed him, and then he got traded to Houston
because it was a mistake. They gave up on that.
DeAndre Hopkins.
They gave up on that. I don't know why Houston
DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, obviously they got a great return, but Houston, like, he was nothing there, and people are gonna like. They value running backs in the NFL much differently now. We're seeing guys not even going in the first round. I'm arguing with people on Twitter because we took Najee over Tevin Jenkins, who literally can't even lay down without being hurt.
So the key that's going to be for Barkley is utilization. So in his his rookie year and then his second year, he was getting like 16 carries a game, about almost 6 targets a game. So compared to last year where he was getting 12 carries a game, 4 targets a game.
Devante Parker was eating into it because he had a torn ACL 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just if he's going to go to where you're saying he's going to have to increase volume, which there's no guarantee that's going to happen.
Why wouldn't he?
Because they don't want him to get hurt again.
He's going to do more than 12 carries a game. 16 carries is not that much. If we think 16 carries is a lot, my argument for DeAndre Swift is completely baseless.
There are currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 10 running backs that averaged more than 16 a game last year.
That's not a lot, though. What are the running backs? Who are the running backs?
Jonathan Taylor, Dalvin Cook, Najee, Derrick Henry with a whopping 27.4 attempts
They're all
per game.
Superstars.
Alvin Kamara, Nick Chubb, David Montgomery, Antonio Gibson, Elijah Mitchell.
That Antonio Gibson one actually really surprises me.
That surprised me as well. But for pretty much every other running back that's more of the pass-catching style, they're averaging around 12 per game. Like, that's just where the league is at now.
We could put this on the board and come back to this like 10 weeks from now. I think Saquon Barkley's going to, as long as he doesn't get hurt, which obviously same thing with CMC, we never freaking know. But if he's healthy, he's going to be destroying his current ADP.
You know, the only way we'll talk about this is if you're right, because you'll want to rub it in.
You're the one that brought up CEH the other day. You're like, I guess Drew was right. I got a screenshot on my phone.
All right.
I don't even know how it's so. I'm with Swift as well, so that's a clean sweep, 3 for 3. Swift over Keenan Allen. No clue how we were talking about CMC and Barkley. Oh, because he has Barkley.
Yeah.
Can AJ Dillon finally put Aaron Jones in the rearview mirror this year? No.
Hold on now.
Like both players, but again, I think, like Joe said, you're going to have a little bit more of a passing volume with Aaron Jones with no Devontae Adams there.
I think AJ Dillon's a breakout player because I think that he's just going to.
You should have said him when I asked earlier about top.
I said I'll do my wide receivers, and then I never got to come back to my running backs.
Okay. All right.
I think AJ Dillon.
Quarterback running back show.
You guys are killing me. I love AJ Dillon this year. His ADP is.
He's at 58 on the rankings I'm looking at right now.
Running back 58?
No. He's running back 25, pick 58.
I have on ESPN, I have him as
Who cares about ESPN? Matthew Berry's not even there anymore.
Yeah, it's tough. His ADP on ESPN is like 106.8. I just pulled it up. Like, that's insane to me. Yeah.
Is that like actual drafts or is that?
It's the average based on where people are actually picking him, not the rankings. You're going off of like what the experts say, right, for your ranks?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going off of how he's actually being picked. I think that's why our ADPs have been not the same because these are where he's actually being drafted based on people doing mock drafts. He's at 106. And
wow.
I think that.
Yeah, that's a slam dunk.
Yeah, A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones are both just going to absolutely feast the fact that Devontae Adams is in there. I think Aaron Jones is going to spend a lot of time spread out wide, and A.J. Dillon, they're both going to be on the field at the same time. This is going to make the Browns backfield. We discussed last year that they're similar. I think that this backfield is going to destroy that backfield in fantasy.
Maybe.
Well, that Browns backfield might not be the same one. Right. So,
yeah, Kareem Hunt's going to be a Falcon in like a week.
I like that.
Yeah, they pretty much their volume was essentially the same. Aaron Jones has a lot of miles on him, but gets double the targets, so that's pretty much why his ADP is where it is. But AJ Dillon also proved that if Aaron Jones goes down, that he's fully capable of being the lead back. So I think the reason that Dillon is being ranked as high as he is because there's that potential. Like he's an independent, a great flex play, but also like has potential to be like an RB1 if called upon. Yeah. Where I don't know if you could say that about other people that are in like a full timeshare like that. So, but I would put them equivalent. What's that?
I said he has huge thighs.
Yes.
DJ goals. Hopefully you're in here. Goals.
I think Drew, you had this on there. I wasn't sure if we were actually going to touch on this, but we're talking about like two-headed monsters in backfields, and we didn't get to see that because of an injury to Travis Etienne last year before the season started. Him and James Robinson are both coming back from injuries. Like, how did this Jaguars backfield shake out this year? And they drafted that, what's his name, Snoop Connor in the middle rounds too.
What a name. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love Etienne this year. I think that they're going to get him the ball as much as possible. And this kind of makes it easier because we can look at James Robinson and look at Cam Akers from last year. Cam Akers and James Robinson both had torn Achilles. I guess if you look at the time frames, because Akers was near the end of right before camp, Robinson was like near the end of the season. So if you're looking at the time frames, they're probably about in the same spot in terms of their injury. Akers didn't look like the same player, which is what you've been arguing for not liking him, which is absolutely understandable. I don't expect James Robinson to be able to do what James Robinson has been the last few years pre-injury, as well as his body's just not going to be up to football shape. So I love Etienne as a late draft pick. He's actually falling in ADP as well.
I think that's because Robinson is off of the PUP. Yeah.
Right. But he's just not going to be in football shape, especially early. Etienne fell.
He's a different type of running back too. Like,
right.
So I see what you're saying about injury. Yeah, I see what you're saying about injury comping to Cam Akers, but like they're very different types of players, though. So I'm curious to see how Robinson does come back.
Right.
Do you have any fears that Doug Peterson will still utilize a committee either way? Does that concern you? I mean, you look at his time at Philly; he was very committee based. He has shown in the past that he has a willingness to have like a more lead back. But
my hope, he's drafted at an ADP at 79. My hope is that he just takes it before Robinson's back. That's what I'm looking for out of Travis Etienne, that he just completely blows away out of the gate and Robinson's not going to be able to eat into it as much because if he's hot, you're just going to keep feeding him the ball. That's what I'm hoping for out of Travis Etienne.
Yeah, I don't know. I go back and forth with Jacksonville. I think that they've done a lot of stuff to improve their team. I think that Trevor Lawrence takes a step forward compared to last year. They have like an actual adult coaching them this year. But I don't know. I feel like the injury that he suffered last year wasn't that big of a deal in terms of like the comeback for Etienne, but I have hesitancy picking him. Like I'll probably feel more comfortable if I see how they're utilizing the offense like in preseason. Like without seeing them play any games, it's like really hard to know like how they envision using that. Because like the Hall of Fame game was very vanilla, like nothing there at all.
They didn't even play.
Going back to Jared's question about like LaVista Chenault, though, if we kind of see ETN in that role, I think that kind of changed the conversation because like Drew's saying about how we could see Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon on the field at the same time, we could see James Robinson and Travis Etienne on the field at the same time.
Yeah, and I think too, like if you look at players that Etienne is getting drafted around, a lot of those players don't really have a lot of targets. So you're looking at like people like Nick Chubb, James Conner, Cam Akers, Gibson. Yeah. He's ranked 39th right now by the experts. But if he gets 5 to 6 targets a game, then like he has that like path to upside, even if he's getting limited rushing attempts.
Your numbers are based off of what the experts expect and predict for the end of year. That's not where he's being drafted, though. He's being drafted at 79th overall. 7th.
I don't put weight into random people doing stuff on ESPN for free leagues.
But that's who. No, these people you're going to do the expert mocks. These people are drafting these players in these positions. They know what they're doing. I get if you're just looking at like beginner mocks, but like these players are all just like us that are just out there just trying to get a feel where the tiers are. Where you're looking at is what experts expect, and they're obviously the experts, but that's not where they're being picked.
No, there's a difference between the ECR, which is like the expert rating, and their ADP.
Yeah, so which ADP are they going off of? You're going off ECR, right? So where's the ADP coming from?
It's combined from a bunch of different sources. So.
Yeah, so I go off of ESPN, so I don't know what Yahoo's up to and those other sites like Sleeper.
Up to.
Yeah, whatever those people are picking at. But on ESPN, which has the highest amount of people playing on that platform. He's going in almost the 8th round.
I mean, yeah, 8th round is fantastic. I think to me, like, it's not going to last. I think he's going to end up going in the 4th, 5th round range. And it's like, am I willing to take
reverse right now, though? He's going in reverse because of James Robinson. He was at 68 or something.
But they've only played that Hall of Fame game. So we'll see, how that much. We can come back to this. Let's let them play a preseason game and we'll see where we're at.
Where do you like
ETN running offense
in terms of drafting him, though? Like, do you like him in that range that the experts are saying?
I mean, for me, I'm probably looking at, if I'm an early round player, like in the early half of the 1st, then I'm probably looking at going running back early, then I'm really liking Mark Andrews in the 2nd round, scooping up some receivers at that point. I would be fine with him as my RB2, probably. I think anybody realistically beyond Josh Jacobs or Elijah Mitchell, I would not feel comfortable having them as like a starting player, maybe as a flex. I like the flex receivers just because I think that it's a safer bet.
Right.
But I think like beyond Josh Jacobs, Elijah Mitchell, I just don't have a lot of confidence in the J.K. Dobbins, the A.J. Dillons to be a week in, week out 10-point player. I would definitely put ETN in, say, like the David Montgomery. Like, I would take ETN probably over Reese Hall. I think at this point, I would take him over Gibson at this point. Zeke would be an interesting one for me. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Can we pivot to Reese Hall quick? Because I had something I wanted to bring up with him. So I like Reese Hall overall. I think he's going to be a really good player in this league and a bell cow running back for them.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing with Reese Hall, I'm not going to draft him in any leagues. The reason for that is that his front half of his schedule is absolutely insanely tough. People are going to draft him and they're going to be looking to get rid of him. He's going to be the ultimate buy low candidate for this season at running back. Like, he plays at Baltimore, Browns, Bengals, Steelers, Broncos, Packers, Patriots in the front end. His playoff schedule is the Jaguars, Lions, Seahawks, and Dolphins. And I also don't buy into Michael Carter. If you look at his stats from last year, he had less than 3 targets. I think it was 3 targets in all of his games, or 3 receptions maybe, in all of his games except for the 2 games where Mike White started.
He had 3.9 on average.
Yeah, and he had crazy numbers with Mike White.
Is it weird at all to you though? Like, because we're talking about how everybody just gets so much training camp hype. I feel like it's kind of been the opposite with Reese Hall. Like, is that concerning? Because he's listed. I know you can say whatever you want about like the first unofficial depth charts or whatever, but he's listed behind Michael Carter and Tevin Coleman on the Jets' first depth chart. Is that concerning to you at all?
I mean, this could be a situation where there was so much bad hype for Jamar Chase last year. The dude could not catch a football if he was standing a foot away from him. I just think that Reese Hall is going to have such a tough start to his career that he's going to be someone that you can buy later on. And if this depth chart thing is true, which I'm not sure about too much buzz with the Jets because they're not exactly a fun franchise to follow. Besides Zach Wilson, of course, that dude.
I was just say, hold on a minute.
That dude. Yeah, he's got stuff going on. We were talking about adults.
Mom's not watching.
Urban Meyer should have learned a thing or two from him.
Hey, they could have taken him instead of Lawrence at 1.
What you just said about the depth chart, though, just helps my narrative. I don't like Breece Hall to start, but I love him midseason to the end of the season. Like Jonathan Taylor, he was nothing at the first half of his rookie year, and then obviously it got accelerated because Marlon Mack got hurt. But it's the perfect scenario for a guy like this to be a buy mid-year. Cam Akers in his rookie year, he didn't do anything till like week 12 or something. He's the perfect buy candidate at some point in the season.
I think he starts week 1. They have too much capital on him.
Yeah, but he's going to struggle. He's going to struggle. Yeah.
We'll see. I think that being a pass catching back, you don't have to run the ball well to be successful in fantasy, though.
Right. Yeah. But that's what people think Michael Carter is going to be, right? I don't see it, but.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's only like 5'8", Michael Carter. So, like, he ain't running between the tackles.
Neither is
you're going
CEH.
to utilize him. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have anything else, but we're really running on time here. So are we back to having Patriots running backs undraftable between the usage issues and the whole not having an offensive coordinator situation? Well, Matt Patricia's about to be named their offensive coordinator, right? Like, didn't I see if they were going to also give him that title? Kind of random to do at this point.
Yeah,
I don't know why. Yes, he is. He's also a failed head coach.
Bill Belichick.
So what do you guys think about the running back situation for the Patriots?
I love this question.
Both Damien Harris and Ramondre Stevenson are fairly close to one another in terms of like their ranks. So they're about like 7 running backs apart. Damien Harris was the RB13 last year, and Ramondre Stevenson had a pretty strong rookie year bearing injury. They have a top 10 offensive line. They have a young quarterback, and they're investing into the offense. I'm not afraid of the New England backfield. But I do have questions about their utilization. This feels very similar to me to the situation in Denver, where you have like an established veteran who had a good year. You have a rookie that had a lot of good like underlying metrics. And like, is there a reason for them to favor one or the other? No. So I wouldn't feel comfortable having one of those be like a starter for me week in and week out. But I think that they are a great bench add. To target in the like 7th or 8th round as like a third running back.
I couldn't agree more with what Joe said. I just wanted to add one thing. Damien Harris scored 50% of his fantasy points roughly on touchdowns last year. Wow. That is not sustainable.
How many touchdowns did he have? Like 12?
I had it written down.
He had to have double.
It was also, I should also point out that it was a historically low year for running backs because of the number of injuries that you had.
Yeah. He had 15 touchdowns last year.
All 15 rushing touchdowns?
Yes.
Wow. All right.
Which isn't sustainable. So
James Conner.
He had 15 rushing touchdowns last year too.
So here's the thing that I think is interesting about the New England backfield. If you look at both of those players, neither one of them really can catch out of the backfield. If you look at what James White did before he got hurt in week 2, he was averaging 6 targets per game. What's going to be interesting is that they have a rookie that they drafted that could potentially take over James White as like the receiving back for the team. But I think whatever one of those guys ends up winning that job in that camp battle, I think that they, to me, almost have like a safer play for PPR success than either Stevenson or Harris, because like Drew said, I mean, they were pretty close on carries. I mean, Harris averaged 13.5, Stevenson averaged 11. Let's assume that they keep those numbers, but they only average 1 target per game apiece. So you're really banking on them to be high efficiency runners that score touchdowns. It does work in some cases, something like a Nick Chubb who doesn't get a lot of passing volume, but is able to get 5 yards a carry and a lot of touchdowns, and it's fine. But I do think that there is a limit to the ceiling there unless they have a high touchdown number, which that fluctuates year to year. Touchdowns historically from a running back perspective are not something that are easily predictable. So I think if you're choosing between these two guys, it's ultimately who's getting more carries inside the 5. And as of last year, it was Damien Harris, and his ADP reflects that.
Yeah. I couldn't. I
Anything else?
No.
Okay, it sounded like you had something more there.
No, I feel like we covered everything. I don't like the backfield. I just think that Ramondre Stevenson has more upside than Damien Harris personally. So I like him more. I feel like I'll roster him more, especially with his ADP, because you can pick him so late that it's essentially free. But I'd prefer not to rely on either of them, like you said. I also think we should discuss Najee quick, because you sent that spreadsheet. They have him in as a tier 2 running back. Do you ultimately believe that he's tier 2? Because I think that Najee the Steelers ran the ball 36% of the time last year. Like, that's low. For the Steelers to be successful on offense, they're going to have to be more balanced. So even if his efficiency stays where it is, I still expect him to produce more than what he did as, what was he, RB3 last year?
I think it depends on the format, but he was a top 5 for sure.
So if he's – I don't see him as a tier 2. If you're looking at a guy who is – I think he was 3rd overall in PPR. And he only had 36% of the offense. Obviously, there's no running back 2 that's competing with him at this point unless we sign someone, which I know that could happen. But he only can go up from here in terms of his efficiency.
Maybe. The offensive line still sucks. The QB play isn't proven to be any better. I think the most interesting piece about the Steelers is going to be, how does the offense change now that Ben Roethlisberger is no longer the offensive coordinator? If you look at what they did in the preseason last year, yes, it was the preseason, but they ran a completely different offense than what they had. They were number 1 in explosive plays in the preseason. They much heavier utilized play action. I think those are all things that you're going to see from this year. Fact of the matter, though, is if Najee's efficiency doesn't improve, that means the Steelers are going to have a lot of 3-and-outs. Yeah. And I don't know if it's going to help that situation at all.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
So I think that Najee has a great floor. I think he's absolutely deserving of a top 5 pick. If you're going to go homer on it and you're worried about Eckler, Cook, or McCaffrey, whatever, I think the earliest I could take him was number 3 overall. But I definitely could see it there. Dude's a dog. And then just to go back to the New England thing, Pierre Strong was the other guy that I was thinking about. So shout out Mike Payne in the comments. But yeah, I mean, I think Najee has a great year. I mean, the tiers don't really mean anything to me that the website gives, but
I just wanted to comment that. I thought that was interesting.
Chad's making his prediction too. Here it is. We're going to end it on this note. Najee is going to be the RB1 by a significant number this year. Put it on the bulletin board. We'll come back to it. Yeah, it's going to go Najee, Jalen Warren, Anthony McFarland, Benny Snell's getting cut.
Kenny Pickett becomes a running back.
There you go. You guys get anything else? This is coming up on an hour and a half of recording here. I don't think that we're going to be this long on a week-to-week basis, but obviously first episode back. We got a ton of questions, which is never a bad thing. We appreciate all the input and questions from you guys. Very interactive chat.
Yeah, shout out to the chat, man. Get y'all some dinner, man. It's been a good time, but I don't think I have anything else to add. Things are obviously subject to change as we're looking at the preseason games. But yeah, I'm just excited that football's back, and hopefully your drafts are later than sooner so you can avoid all the injury stuff. So
one last thing.
Facts.
Derrick Henry. Think he should be the top pick over Jonathan Taylor?
A top pick, or did you say the top pick?
I have him as the guy I'd prefer over Jonathan Taylor.
No.
Matt Ryan is going to potentially dump it off to the guy that I hate.
Naheem Hines season, baby. Let's go.
There could be some less targets there. And before his injury, which I'm not worried about his Jones fracture at all, I just want to put that out there, he was pacing to do better than what Jonathan Taylor did last year. I don't understand why he's being overlooked and he's going near the end of the first round. I just wanted to bring that out there.
The biggest thing for Derrick Henry is that he is currently sitting at 1,495 touches in his 5-year career. So he is projected to get into that 1,800 carries, touches, whatever threshold. So to me, this is really like, if you're a Derrick Henry fan, yes, the dude is built like a non-human.
He's a pure force.
Yeah, like this could be the last viable year for him. I think that it was good to see his increase in workload in the passing game last year, but the Titans are worse. Their offensive line also got substantially worse this past year. So they've dropped from the end of the year at 16. They're now ranked as the 27th best offensive line.
Why is that? What did they lose? I'm not realizing.
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
But for their center Ben Jones signed somewhere else, or did he sign back there? Because that was the only free agent I think they had on that line. Unless they're just expecting regression from Taylor Lewan stuff.
When you have your hat on forward, you definitely look like Daniel Vogelbach, like a lot right now.
No, he's still their center.
Okay.
They'll still be there. But, yeah, so that's just projections based off of this year. Obviously, we all know how we feel about PFF, but it's one of the few sources that we have for offensive line.
All right, yeah, we're done here. We're done here.
Yeah, I was trying to wrap up like 5 minutes ago.
He also only gets, even with the increase in targets, it was only 2.5 per game.
How do we feel about, obviously,
Roger Saffold? That was the offensive lineman they lost.
Oh, okay. Well, the ADP for Bobby Trees we mentioned, but like they lost AJ Brown, so they might rely on King a little more. So I'm high on him. I don't understand why he's being drafted where he's drafted. But.
True, we're trying to end the show, bro.
All right, bye.
Guys, come back next week. We're gonna be doing this again. Subscribe to the channel, leave us a like, leave us a comment of what you want to see, I guess. But next week we know what we're doing. So, but come back, ask questions, steer the show a completely different direction, make us stay for an hour and a half, whatever you guys want to do. But we'll see you then. For Smitty, for Joe, for Drew, this has been the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show. We are back, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.